At NBI, we believe every home, business and farm in Ireland deserves access to high-speed fibre broadband. NBI, building a limitless Ireland.
Spoke all over my house last night to give me my Christmas present. He gave me a framed picture, and the picture was me and him hugging each other, and we almost looked like we're going to kiss. Golfer-caddy relationship is very individual. Everybody looks at me and probably thinks that I'm really chilled out, but I'm actually not. Like, inside I'm very uptight. I can get anxious about golf and about stuff, and he's just so chilled out, so laid back. Just a great person for me to have around. My thing would be always try and hang around with people who are better than you. I know nothing lasts forever, he knows nothing lasts forever, so we're just going to give it as good a shot as we can. We'll always have Port Rush, and that's what I said to him, like, no matter what happens, we'll always have that.
I'm the Chief Executive of Chambers Ireland, and thank you for joining us today for the Future of Trade and Commerce in the Brexit Era discussion. Make sure to join the conversation online on Twitter and Facebook at Business Show Ireland, and be sure to use the hashtag Rebooting Ireland. So today I'm delighted to be joined by Julie Sinnamon and Michael Nolan. Julie will be known to almost everybody. She's the Chief Executive of Enterprise Ireland, and in addition to that serves on things like the National Competitiveness Council. She's on the Investment Committee of the Irish Strategic Investment Fund, and also a board member of Social Entrepreneurs Ireland. Michael works for effectively a startup, Declaron.ie, very much in the customs space, rising from Brexit, so taking the opportunities that Brexit is bringing to the table. And Michael comes with a fantastic background in the e-commerce world, having had senior positions in fabulous organisations such as CarTrawler and eShop World. So to get straight into the discussion, the first question I'm going to ask, I'm going to set the scene first, is around where we are with Brexit. So we've got the Trade and Cooperation Agreement in place with the UK, but it's very slow to take effect. We have issues such as the Northern Ireland Protocol. Again, this was supposed to give Northern Ireland companies the opportunity to act on both sides of new borders, and we're seeing that being slow to get off the ground. The EU Parliament still has to agree the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, and while that's happening, the UK is still reluctant to get involved in some important committees. We've got the Brexit Adjustment Reserve, where the money Ireland is getting seems to be reducing rather than increasing from the European Union. And we're also in a global context of elements of protectionism and supply chain nationalism, driven not just by Brexit, but also by COVID. So a lot of issues on the table. But we want to talk about businesses here. What's the real impact been? So what immediate impacts have we seen? Julie, can I turn it over to you? You're working with so many fabulous Irish exporting companies. What have the immediate impacts been for them?
Okay, and thanks, Ian, and good to talk to you. Well, obviously, we got off to a slow start to 2021, and we saw a fairly significant drop in trade between Ireland and the UK, and indeed between the EU and the UK. And that was for many reasons. I mean, a lot of companies in anticipation of Brexit had been stockpiling products in the UK, not knowing what the outcome of the negotiations would be. Obviously, there were concerns, some of the UK companies coming into Ireland, there were customs issues, etc., which caused delays. There was substitution of some goods, there was COVID-19, so it wasn't a normal start to the year. Having said that, we've seen an increase in those trade levels over the last number of weeks. Obviously, the UK have deferred implementation of the regulations, etc., into their initially. So that has been very welcome by Irish companies supplying into the UK. Obviously, the trade, there's been a significant 500% increase in January of the trade, the shipping lines between Ireland and Europe, which has been fantastic. We're seeing a lot of companies concerned about delays with land bridge going directly into Europe. But having said that, we have a high level. We opened an additional office in the UK in 2019 in Manchester. We've had a lot of contact with all of our companies who are exporting into the UK, and the feedback we're getting from them is they're going to continue to supply the UK market. In fact, over 80% of them have said they expect to grow their trade into the UK market. They're putting a focus on that. And while they're, dealing with, the transition, I think companies are very adaptive and have, got on with it. But we're not picking up any signals that companies are going to walk from the UK market. It is our most important market. It was 42% about 10 years ago. It's down to about 31% of the total exports from Irish companies, but a really, really important market, and one that there are deeply embedded relationships between Ireland and the UK, and companies want to continue to do business there.
Definitely a market we want to ensure we can do business with easily. And Michael, just on the ground, Declaron.ie, what changes are you seeing happening in the practicalities of trade between the two countries?
Yeah, I'd start by saying that Irish companies, kind of helped by the likes of Enterprise Ireland, have actually been better prepared than their UK counterparts. But a big piece for me with trade is that there's by its definition, there's multiple parties involved. So what we've found is actually the UK companies' lack of preparedness has impacted on the trade. And even the trade volumes we are seeing, people should be aware that it is the B2C trade that's actually doing very well at the moment. Lockdown is actually driving that kind of B2C online shopping. And the big players have got their situation corrected. There's still some stories of smaller retailers not being able to handle the duties and taxes for customers, and people getting a shock when they get a phone call from Irish Revenue. But from a B2B point of view, for me, there is absolutely, it must be welcome, the extra shipments direct from Ireland to mainland Europe. But all that has done is kind of suggested that there isn't as big a problem on the Irish to UK trade transport that we feel there is. And we still think that as we come out of lockdown, there are companies that still aren't prepared. And quite often it's not actually the documentation it is the conversations with your trading partners, with the fact that there's a company in the UK involved, there's a transport company involved. We've had some of our customers come to us and they have up to 16 to 18 players involved in their trade, because each different supplier they have in the UK has a different transport company. And it's how you juggle all of those that's really the most important piece for us at Declaron that our customers get right now.
That's a really interesting point, and it leads on to the next question I was going to ask, which was around tariffs and non-tariff barriers. And I suppose the difference between those two has never been more visible and more pronounced. So what's the future for this distinction? Because it's really important. I think Britain in its negotiations seem to keep their eye focused on tariffs only. But by the same time, they want to diverge, it seems, and that's where the non-tariff barriers coming in. Julie, how do you see this evolving?
Well, first of all, on the tariff side, and the fact that there was so much discussion in the media for the months coming up to December and the actual deal being done, that there was an expectation that if there was a trade deal, that would mean it would be business as usual. And clearly, the trade agreement that was done, while it was very welcome to give some certainty, it fundamentally changed our relationship with the UK market. It has become a third country market. With that comes bureaucracy. So there's a lot of paperwork to be done from companies in terms of importing and exporting. Things that caught some companies by surprise was, for example, something like VAT. So if you were importing from the UK, you bring it into a member state and there was VAT payable at point of entry, and those caused delays, which in turn then had a lot of Irish trucks that had gone out full of goods. The Irish companies were better prepared, so it was up to 80% of our companies had made plans by the end of the year. So there's a lot of work done by government across the board in terms of getting people ready. But the focus was all on tariffs, and as time goes on, would be a lot of concerns from companies, companies in the pharma space, companies with regard to where you have CE marks and needing to get a UK CA mark going forward, labelling requirements, etc. Different procurement rules that will develop between the EU and the UK. So there's and then delays. I mean, every bit of paper that has to be produced has a cost associated with it. Now, one of the things that we introduced in Enterprise Ireland was ready for customs grants, and so far we've supported 1,000 companies to put staff in place to be able to deal with these issues. But it is a significant additional cost, and particularly important for the low margin businesses. And there's a lot of traditional low margin businesses that are going into the UK market, and those extra costs are pretty painful for them. So but the non-tariff issues are things that over time will become bigger problems and will have to be dealt with. State aid rules and all of these issues will be impacted depending on what divergence happens in standards going forward.
Thanks, Julie. So a much more complex situation we find ourselves in, even though we thought we had an agreement to prevent us from these difficulties. And Michael, just again, we were talking earlier about some of the issues you're seeing for people importing, say, from the European Union, but passing through the UK. What challenges are those companies facing now?
Yeah, I think I'd echo the point that both of you made. There was this suggestion pre-Christmas that the free trade agreement was going to be this panacea that was going to solve everything. And there was a number of campaigns across both government organisations and even ourselves of trying to get the message out there that those barriers were still going to be there. Regardless of whether there was duties or not, people were still going to have to do this paperwork, which was going to delay that truck, which was going to require an overhead. And as a company, Julie, that has benefited from the grant aid that EI have there for employees dealing with customs, that has been a lifeline to Irish companies. The key piece for me on the free trade agreements is that it allowed, you still had all that additional documentation that you were talking about, Ian, but it was very specific on what it covers. And it covers goods either moving from the EU, that is manufactured in the EU and its origin is the EU, into the UK, or vice versa. Where a lot of people got caught out was, and unfortunately Ireland suffers from this probably the most out of all the EU countries, is that goods are brought into the UK and warehoused in the UK for both the UK and the Irish markets. So you have goods created, manufactured in Germany, brought into the UK. When they're being brought into Ireland, duties are applicable again. So this is a massive cost. And Julie also mentioned VAT. Again, a huge shock to a lot of companies, and low margin companies here are really, really hurting. So I think for me, people have to take the point that Julie was saying. The UK is a third country now, a third party country. They need to assume that there are costs, real costs associated with dealing with it. And they can be minimized by changing your work processes and the company's processes, and building the time into those processes to allow for that documentation to be created correctly. And I think that for me is the most important thing, what we say to our customers, because if your customs declarations are compliant from the outset, you will have the greatest chance to get through what's called a green routing when you come in through the ports. And then you don't need to worry about any kind of audits that might come down the road or around from revenue or Irish customs. You know that you're ready. So I think looking at your supply chain and talking to your counterparts in the UK, they'd be the two most important things for me.
And it certainly seems to me, listening to the debate, your point, Michael, about the fact that potentially your UK company counterparties have so many contacts. I think you said 18 different contacts in some cases, and also the complexity of tariffs, non-tariffs, customs, VAT, and so on. I think companies need to be very clear on what their contractual arrangements are as well. I think most companies probably traditionally traded with the UK on nearly an open account basis, where the only real concern was around currency exposure and credit risk. But there's now significant effort needed to understand who's responsible for what.
And there will be a term on any of these cross-border agreements called the Incoterms. Most people will have not even considered this pre-Brexit. But that is what governs who is responsible for making the export declaration and who is and paying any costs associated with that, and similarly with the import. So it's really important to have a look at your contract negotiations, but also to have the conversation with your supplier. We've had customers who checked their documentation, saw that they were working on a particular Incoterm, be it duties paid or duties not paid, and assumed that would work. But their counterpart in the UK at the last minute only started to read the documentation themselves and held everything up and said, no, hang on, we're not paying the import duties into Ireland. And that left this particular customer exposed for 3 or 4 weeks, where they kind of didn't have that stock and had to substitute. So, having those conversations, and again, having a system that allows for those different organizations, including the transport company, to take part in the conversation and take part in creating the documentation. I think that's going to be critical.
And actually, if I can just come in, one of the issues that we have found with a number of companies on their sub-supply, it was actually European product that came into the UK. It would have been broken down into the UK, came out to Ireland. Now, first of all, there's a middleman in the UK. There was an EU product being converted to sterling, then back into the EU, and all sorts of things. And now with the issue that you've raised, Michael, in terms of then paying duties, bringing it into Ireland, having been broken up in the UK. So it is forcing companies to look at their sub-supply, and actually, in many cases, they will then, over time, get their act together and bring product in and substitute for European suppliers for, directly into Ireland, etc. Some of these things will take a bit of time. They ultimately will take cost out of the system too, for some companies, and we've seen that quite a bit, which is going to be really important.
The Incoterms is a really interesting thing. They're actually administered, the terms of them are administered globally by the International Chamber of Commerce. And for years, it's based in Paris, and they've been saying to me that there's a disproportionate lack of interest in Incoterms in Ireland versus every other trading nation globally. So I think we're going to have to go up to speed on that contractual issue.
I've got a feeling that'll change for you, Ian. We definitely have customers who are very aware now of their Incoterms that never were before.
Great, and I think even consumers will have to get used to it as well when the postman comes knocking with a parcel and the bill.
Yeah.
So if I could turn then to the opportunities, and we're actually talking about opportunities. I mean, Michael, you're an opportunity. It sounds like I'll be busy with Incoterms in due course. But Julie, your companies now, what can they look at now in addition to the UK market?
Well, actually, and this is one of the positives, and at times we can struggle for positives, but actually, and as I said earlier, 10 years ago, 42% of Irish enterprise exports went into the UK. Today, it's 31%. We've grown the UK by about 50% over that period, but we've grown the rest of the world at a faster rate. And we have had a specific focus on the Eurozone. And one of the things that we're trying to effect is a mindset shift where companies think of the Eurozone as an extension of the domestic market, which is where the UK has been, right? And it doesn't mean we're walking from the UK, but actually the ease of doing business. We've been doing programs like Enter the Eurozone and getting, maybe 30 CEOs and sales and marketing staff working together with a top business school in Berlin, putting together plans for Europe in terms of developing the market entry plans and then working with our staff. We set a target to increase exports over the 2017-2020 period by 50%. Now we were at 5.6 billion. It was 4.1 billion at the start by the end of 2019. I suspect, and we're just finalising our figures over the next week or two, that we will not have grown that over the period with COVID. But what we're finding is real momentum. Companies that are in one Eurozone market extending into 2 or 3 markets. It's not for everybody, but people who were totally committed saying it's not really for us, we'll stick with the UK. As they see other companies having success in markets such as the Eurozone, they will then follow suit and go into those markets. So I think the Eurozone is a market which, relative to the scale of the population, there is massive potential. There's a very open attitude, particularly with Brexit, to supporting Irish companies. I earlier this week met with all the ambassadors from the European countries, and they're really keen to work to help Irish companies get into their markets. There's also an opportunity for backloading into Ireland, because there's a lot of trucks coming back to Ireland from Europe that are not full, and therefore being able to substitute, do some of that sub-supply direct into Ireland. I think there's opportunities for a two-way street in terms of developing those market links. But we've opened 2 new offices in the Eurozone, and there's a strong level of interest and growing interest from our companies.
And of course, a few years ago, the government made the strategic decision to change the Department of Foreign Affairs into the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, to ensure that embassies took on a more responsible role for that trade promotion abroad. So that's working really well, I think, and companies should be leveraging that.
Yeah, well, we're obviously working really closely together. Actually, trade is back with the last government into enterprise, trade and employment. So these things, so it's back with our department. But basically what has happened over the last 4 to 5 years is a Team Ireland approach in terms of the various parts of government working together in the overseas markets. And I think that's really important.
Great. And then, Michael, in terms of that ability to connect, and let's not forget about importers too. We tend to focus a lot on exporters. We need importers to be effective too. What are you seeing as the opportunity?
Yeah, well, Brexit is a hugely disruptive event which has shaken the entire European market. And as we kind of indicated earlier on, Irish companies actually are ahead of a lot of their European counterparts. So there's a huge, any disruptive event is going to shake up opportunity. And there's a huge opportunity now for Irish companies to replace some of their, maybe their European competitors in the British market, and again, some of their British competitors in the European market. So, being prepared, being one of the great things about Irish companies and Irish, Irish people in general, is their willingness to work collaboratively. So this is trade. having those open conversations with either your customers or your suppliers in the UK, being willing to work with them to resolve these issues, because they are resolvable. And, companies like Declaron help companies resolve those as effectively as possible. But the very fact that there's disruption in the market will benefit lean companies,
Yeah, absolutely. We're starting to run down on time, so I'll just throw one last question in, which is about Northern Ireland, and they've this unique opportunity to take advantage of effectively having a foot in both markets. Can we help there? What can we do to facilitate that and give them the skills and the expertise, for example, that we've built up over the years? Julie.
Okay, well, I'll kick off as a County Down woman to answer that question, and I certainly hope they take advantage of it. I mean, at present, a lot of the political issues with the border down the Irish Sea, etc., have probably blurred the reality. And some of the companies that I'm talking to here are a bit nervous about the cross-border trade just at present because of those issues. But there is a unique opportunity. Now, we have been working closely with Invest Northern Ireland over a number of years. When we run things like Leadership for Growth programs, we include Invest Northern Ireland clients, and those relationships, when people spend time together over a number of weeks with other business people across the island, they build lasting relationships. And I think it's really more important than it ever has been for people on both sides of the border to reach out, organizations that are dealing with companies, and to try to help build those relationships at this time, because it's really, it's not just about trade, it is about peace on the island as well. And I think, there are a lot of challenges coming down the tracks, if you take the whole carbon reduction issues, etc. And there's lots of areas where I think we can work together with companies in Northern Ireland, and that operates, and I think, when things settle down, companies in Northern Ireland will realise that they can have the best of both worlds effectively and do business, throughout Europe, and really maximise their position.
Great. Well, I'm afraid we've run out of time. I want to thank Michael and Julie very much for making my job very, very easy. So thank you both for doing that. It's been really an interesting discussion. We could have gone on for hours. So everyone out there, please make sure to join the conversation online at Business Show Ireland and hashtag Rebooting Ireland. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Ian. Good to talk to you, Michael.